Hello? Is this thing on? Oh, hey, hi. Yes, I am talking to you. Before the video gets started, I just wanted to say a special thank you to all my subscribers, both old and new. Also, I still haven't finished my Q&A for 2,000, and I might wait until I hit 3,000 because I'm more than halfway there. I had my questions half answered when my lovely computer decided to turn off and lost the document. I do have the questions saved in an email, and anyone who's asked a question, I still have it. And if you haven't and you want to, please email me a question. Also, if you like me or my content, please like it, share it, subscribe it, and hit the bell so you know when I have new videos out. Okay, rambling done. Let's get into it. Imagine for just a moment that you walked into a room and stopped in your tracks because you realized you have already lived this moment. Or have you? Now imagine you have a long conversation on the phone with your best friend or your grandmother, only it never happened. They say you haven't spoken to them since yesterday. Now imagine trying to figure out what was real and what wasn't. Here are 7 stories of people who've been baffled by ordinary events that turned out to be not so ordinary. Enjoy. I was walking my dog in the park. It was a nice sunny morning, lots of dew on the grass, so wherever you walked it would leave a path. It would be impossible for anyone to walk through the grass without leaving some sort of trail. My dog and I are strolling along. He's ahead of me, pissing on bushes, sniffing, etc. When he stops cold, his hackles go up, and he looks across the park, growling. I look to where he's staring, and there's a guy with a dog about 100 yards away, near a large tree. Legs are moving like he's walking. However, even though his legs are moving, his ground speed doesn't seem to match with the speed of his legs, sort of like watching someone moonwalk. Anyway, I write it off to perspective or humidity or something, and I just keep walking. The dog, however, won't walk with me and stays rooted to his spot, making his high-pitched whine. I walk back to the dog and look over to where the guy was, and he's still in about the same spot, still moving, oddly. So I decide to check out this dude. I hook up the dog to the leash, and we start walking across the wet grass to where he is, thinking our dogs might play together. My dog is not happy. He's clinging to my left leg like Velcro as we make our way across the field. As we progress, I notice that it appears this guy is actually walking away from me. I don't seem to be gaining on him at all. At this point, I still don't think anything is that odd until I get to the place where I first saw him, the large tree. I look down at the ground, and I see an almost perfect circle about 10 inches in diameter of dry, dew-free grass. There are no footprints leading to or from this circle. The dog, on the other hand, is flipping his shit and is looking at where we just came from. I look up and see that the guy isn't ahead of me anymore. He's back on the other side of the grassy field and is just standing where I just was when I first saw him. He has a dog. He is staring at me. He hooks his dog to the leash and starts walking toward us. Needless to say, I freaked out and we cut sideways out of the park, down a populated street. I kept looking back but didn't see him or his dog again. I know it sounds insane to say this out loud, but I believe I saw a time warp of myself walking my dog and tried to chase myself. One night, I had a dream of my mother and I dying in a bomb blast. It was terrifying. I was sweating like a madman. Next day, my mom and I went to this marketplace to get some of her fabric tailored. It was 3:30 in the afternoon when suddenly I got a stomachache. I started to cry and whine about how bad my stomach was hurting. My mom finally gave up and took me back home. Back home, I was suddenly okay. I went out to play with my friends, and my mom thought I was probably pretending to be sick just to play with my friends. But when I came back inside, she hugged me tightly and started to cry. A bomb had been detonated in the same marketplace we were in 1 hour ago. The most terrifying thing is that my mother tells me to this day that she believes I actually saw the man who placed the bomb and started to cry. But I honestly don't remember. When I was a teenager, I had 2 really intense dreams in the same night. The first one was about an online friend of mine calling to tell me that she'd broken up with her boyfriend, and I happened to sing a few lines of Seal's Don't Cry to her over the phone. The second dream was me finding my real-life friend dead, floating in her bathtub. I didn't think anything of it went about my day until I logged online, and the online friend came online to tell me that her boyfriend broke up with her. I immediately asked if I could call her, and she said no. I remember thinking that it meant something like, I could change it. Not long after, my phone rang, and it was the other real-life friend I had dreamt about. I completely freaked at this point, but talked to her normally. She was just talking about school and other mundane stuff until I realized I heard a splash in the background, and I asked her, "Are you in the tub?" When she said yes, I felt like my heart had stopped. I asked her, "What did you do?" She didn't answer me right away. After a very long pause, she told me she'd taken an entire bottle of pills and chased it with mushrooms and vodka. She'd gotten scared waiting for it to hit her, so she called me so she'd hear someone's voice. I hung up and called 911. By the time they got there, she was unconscious but alive. And today, she's a mother to a beautiful little girl. And she's okay. When I was 16, I went to California with my mother. While doing some shopping in La Jolla, Mom wanted to go into an artist's studio that I wasn't too interested in. So I decided to wander around the area to see what I could see. I walked past an alley between 2 shops and saw a figure resting against a dumpster. I could tell he was likely homeless due to his tattered, dirty clothes, shoes, and grungy demeanor. He looked up at me in a raspy, tired voice and asked, "Son, might I trouble you for $1?" I'm not usually the type to approach situations like this, but I figured, since we were in a relatively active area, that I didn't have too much to worry about. Plus, he was a human in need. I walked closer to him and pulled $1 out of my wallet. As I handed it to him, I noticed that his hat was a Vietnam War veteran hat with a few pins on it. I asked him if he served, and he said that he most regrettably did. He also said that, since you were so kind to give me $1, I believe that could buy you a story or 2. Now, I love war stories, memorabilia, strategies, anything. Love this stuff. I was more than happy to listen to him. He began to tell me his story. He was 19 when he first arrived in Nam under the colors of black and yellow. He said he was one of the first, damn proud of it too. He told me the story of how he was a heligunner, and how he was the unlucky son of a bitch that had to carry the goddamn meat saw around, the M60. He said his entire squad was wiped out by a rocket barrage, and that none of them even made it out of the city. It was at this point that he got visibly distressed, and I felt extremely human. I don't want to experience war like that. The men you've done so much with, who all have families and stories of their own, suddenly gone. He never once mentioned his name. After a few moments of silence, he looked up at me and said, "Thank you for listening, and thank you for the $1. I promised you 2 stories, but as I could barely make it through one, I'd like you to have this. You seem to like and appreciate it more than me." He pulled off an M60 pin from his hat and handed it to me. I thanked him for the pin and the story and for his service so that people like me could live our lives comfortably and without knowing the horrors of war. My phone began to vibrate. It was my mother asking where I was. I stepped out of the alley and flagged her in my direction. When I turned back to tell the man it was time for me to go, you know in those movies where the protagonist is talking to some mysterious being, turns away for a second, and turns back only to find their guest has disappeared without a trace, just completely gone? That's what happened. There was nowhere he could have gone. Nowhere he could have hid. Nothing there but the padlocked dumpster. I heard nothing. My mother didn't see anyone run past me, nothing. I told my mother about him and showed her the pin. She agreed it was completely odd. Later, when I thought back about it, I remembered that he said his entire squad was wiped out and that none of them made it out of the city. None made it out of the city. When I was 10 or 11, I was going to the beach with my aunt and her friends. There were 2 cars of us. To get there, we had to go through a very large industrial area. We didn't know the direction, so our car was following the other. Suddenly, they did an unexpected turn, so our driver had to take a sharp bend. In that moment, we heard a very clear, loud voice inside the car say, "Sharp bend, The driver immediately slammed on the brakes. We looked at each other, puzzled. We all recognized it as a voice that didn't belong to anyone in the car. At the very same moment, we noticed that the other car stopped as well. The other driver got out of their car with a scared face and said, Did you hear that too?" They heard the very same thing inside of their car. I work as a nighttime security attendant at an apartment building. 24 stories and one of the oldest buildings in the city. One night I'm sitting here and the phone rings at about 3 a.m. I answer. "Hello, this is Rick at the front desk. How can I help you?" The voice on the other end sounds female, but totally garbled, and the only bit I could make out was 23rd floor. I tried to tell the person I couldn't understand them and asked what apartment they were in, but again, garbled response and 23rd floor. After the third time of trying to understand them and the same response, I said since I couldn't understand them, I'd come up and meet them in the hallway. So I go to the main elevators, and both are up on, surprise, the 23rd floor. Luckily, we have an older service elevator, and it's only on the 7th floor, so I call it down. I get in and hit the button for the 23rd floor, but it won't move. The inner door won't close. I unlock the reset panel, and boom, start going up. Door still open. I'm freaking out. The elevator is shaking because it's really fast and really old. As I'm going up, I just stay toward the back and finally reach the 23rd floor. I step out. The door closes just fine. I look around the hallway. There's no one around. I walk slowly, trying to listen for anyone awake who might have called, but there's nothing. So now I head in the opposite direction and go toward the regular elevators. When I get to them, they're just sitting there, doors open. I was pretty freaked out, but I knew it could just be the elevators on the fritz. So I get in and figure I'll just reset them when I get to the first floor. When I hear the sound of the back stairwell closing. So I quickly get out and go to the stairwell, and lo and behold, there's no one there. But the maintenance door to the machine room is ajar, and at that time, I'm the only one in the building with a key. At the top of the building is a large machine room housing all the really loud machinery that does stuff in the building and allows access to the roof. I don't like going into it. It's creepy as hell and no one ever goes in there. At this point, I'm completely freaked out, but I muster up and head in. I shout, "Hello?" No response. The lights in this room flicker, so I can't see well either. But at the other end of the room, I can make out the roof access door, and sure as shit, it's slightly open. So I slowly continue forward, checking the space in between each machine as I walk by. No one there. So I open the roof access door. I can't see anyone ahead of me, but there's a slight wraparound, and if there was a jumper or something, I needed to be sure, so I step out and leave the door ajar. Almost immediately, the door is pulled shut. Now, I might have written it off as wind or something, but the door is hard to shut and hard to open. I immediately grab the handle and yank it open, slam it behind me, and run straight for the maintenance door. It automatically locks when it's closed, so I slam it shut and go back to the 23rd floor hallway. Get into the elevator, door still open, and go all the way down to the first floor. Go back to the main lobby, and as soon as I sit down, the phone rings. I pick it up, don't say a word, and sure as hell the garbled voice again, and only audibly saying, 23rd floor. I hung up the phone, turned off the ringer, and spent the rest of the evening just staring at the parking garage security monitor. My boyfriend was driving through Texas on his way to visit relatives. It's the dead of night on a 2-lane highway in the middle of nowhere. He hasn't passed a gas station in a while, and his tank was getting low. So he decided to fill up at the next available station. After a while, he rolls into a small town. There's a little diner on the right and a local gas station on the left. All the lights are on, and cars are filling up, so he figures this place is open. It seems to be exceptionally busy for this time of night, but he really needs gas, so he decides to wait in line to fill up. There's only 2 cars ahead of him, so it shouldn't take that long. At this point, his sister wakes up in the back seat. What's taking so long? It's been like 10 minutes, and not 1 car has moved. All of a sudden, his sister blurts out, "None of the people are moving." Sure enough, the people waiting in the cars, the people filling up, the cashier, the people in the convenience store, none had moved since they pulled up to the station. His heart is racing at this point, so he pulls up to get a closer look. And sure enough, every single person at this gas station is a goddamn mannequin. What about you? Have you dreamt about something only to have it happen to you the next day? Have you slipped into some sort of time warp to see yourself before you as you stare in disbelief? You know, there's a song that goes something like, "Doesn't it make you sad to know that life is more than just who we are?" And frankly, I thank my lucky stars that there is something else more to life than just this. If you have a story you would like to see featured here, please contact me through any of my social media links or email me at DuchessDark676@gmail.com. See you next time.